Ghana and the United Arab Emirates are to collaborate on education, development, and delivery for mutual benefits. The two countries will adopt the best international learning practices in these areas of education. 1. Technology, school leadership, accountability, science and technology, engineering and mathematics, STEM education to positively transform both economies. But not only that, in fact, the new Ghana Minister of Education is really ready to help His Excellency Nana Addo akufo-addo to achieve his goals in terms of transforming the Ghana education system to compete globally. With his initiatives such as computing, robotics, 3D printing, engineering, and creative arts. And I think most developing countries can learn from this vibrant initiative of Honorable Dr. Yao Osei-Aduchum. So, without talking much, let's go and hear more from the Honorable Minister himself.
Around the world, a great transformation is taking place in the various education systems. It's taking place so that they can respond to the needs of their population and to their human capital needs. Around the world, governments are doing everything possible to reposition themselves so that they can have an opportunity to transform their education system in order to ensure that the education system will also meet their socioeconomic needs. And Ghana is not in isolation in this instance. The president believes that the fourth industrial revolution is upon us. In order to make sure that we have a population that is truly empowered and skilled enough to lead the nation at this critical juncture, in order to ensure that we understand that students should be able to do computing, understand artificial intelligence, robotics, and not forget the Internet of Things, 3D printing, genetic engineering, a number of things in the STEM area, not forgetting the creative arts field as well. This government have taken various initiatives into account during the first 4 years. I'm sure you heard of many things during the first 4 years. And sometimes when you take them in isolation, you begin to miss the point. Missing the point comes when you take Free Senior High School in isolation. But when you begin to see that in the 21st century, education is not just a piece of the puzzle, but it's the whole puzzle. That education is what will transform the socio-economic stage of Ghana. Then you begin to see why there's a need for Free Senior High School. When you begin to realize that for us to transform our fortunes, yes, we'll do many things in other spheres, but if we don't transform education, transformation in the socio-economic arena will elude the nation. Then you understand why the president was in a hurry during the first year of his first term to say that Free Senior High School is a must and it has to be done. Around the world, countries that have transformed their fortune did so because they were able to raise a large proportion of their citizens in the field of STEM, and not just STEM, also move them up to the tertiary level. There's a talk about the gross tertiary enrollment ratio, ensuring that the vast majority of our citizens will have tertiary education. I explain this in simple terms. If you go to a village in Bosonche called Bonkoko, and you ask the chief of Bonkoko, what is the number of people between the ages of 18 to 22? Just the population. What number of people are between 18 to 22? And the chief responds and says 100. And then you further on ask the chief, Nana, how many people in this town are at the tertiary level, whether it's teacher training college, nursing training college, any form of tertiary? And Nana responds that I only have 10 people. This is irrespective of the age. Then Bonkoko has a 10% gross tertiary enrollment ratio. If you go to another town, you ask, and then you have 20%. That town that has 20% will develop faster than the town that only has 10%. Around the world, countries that have transformed their fortune do so because they move that numbers up. If you look at Mauritius, 40%. Mauritius is now moving, it's seeing transformation. Of course, South Korea, 93.6. The nation is transformed. Recently, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo akufo-addo, said something about gross tertiary enrollment ratio when he said by 2030, the gross tertiary enrollment ratio of Ghana should be 40%. It escaped a lot of people. He was not saying that the growth in enrollment should be 40%. He said the gross tertiary enrollment ratio should be 40%. What is the current ratio now? 18.8%. And that will not bring about socioeconomic transformation of this country. But how can you get these tertiary numbers up when 50% of your youth don't have opportunity for secondary education? It's not going to happen. Let me talk about improving the quality of education. You see, free senior high school is an access opportunity. Opportunity to bring the vast majority of our youth to senior high schools and to technical schools. Prior to this, the F-Cube had come. Free compulsory universal basic education. That too was an access issue. It came with a capitation grant so that parents would not be asked to pay fees but can send their children to school. That was an access opportunity. But education do not just rest on access. It rests on three main things: access, quality, and relevance. These are the three most important things. You can have a cross-cutting concept of equity, but access, quality, relevance is what you deal with in the education space. And that is what was tackled during the first term of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's administration. So invariably you hear people talking about the standards, and I say to them, this is the first time a government has said, I'm not just going to do one thing, I'm going to do many things at the same time. If you know something about education research, you're going to realize that in education, you can't do one thing and expect a change. We have done the piecemeal approach to education reform in this country for many times, many years. We heard about the 1987 education reform, severing off some part of the upper secondary and creating the junior high education that happens to be having relegated to the upper primary level, so to speak. When you look at the 1987 education reform and what it did, prior to that, we have 7 years of secondary education. 7 years that a student could be at Mfansipim or at Chimota. During those 7 years, he had access to library, access to computer lab, access to science lab. The 1987 education reform said, you know what? We are not going to do this number of years, 7. We're only going to do 6. But with the 6, it's also said we're only going to keep 3 at the higher end of the secondary education system. So invariably, because of how we've implemented junior high, you hear people saying, we need 4 years of secondary. And I ask them, why do we need 4 years when we already have 6? But because we did not implement all the 6, we cut off the 4 years from upper secondary and ended up with a situation where the lower secondary, which is 3, was shipped to elementary school building. That used to be middle school. You see, when you talk about secondary education, all jurisdictions, this is what you have to have in mind. In many countries, they have 6 years of secondary education. But you decide whether you keep the 6 years at one location or you split it into 2, 3 at one end, the senior end, and 3 at the lower secondary or the junior end. We decided that we're going to do 3 at the upper end, senior high, and do 3 at the lower end. Unfortunately, though, the reform of 1987 did not do justice to the lower end. The lower end became part of primary school. They wore the same uniform as primary school students, taught by the same teachers invariably, and we forgot about the fact that the lower 3 was truly secondary or high school. So if you meet anybody on the street and you ask them how many years of high school do we have in Ghana, you'll be told that's 3, and we wish it was 4, but it is actually 6 years. And President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is saying that he really wants to ensure that high school is actually 6 years, and that we should do everything possible to strengthen the lower secondary level. So you're going to see that as one of the areas that we're going to focus on in the next 3+ years, to make sure you strengthen the lower secondary end of things. If high school has libraries, lower secondary must also have them. So there are going to be a number of transformation activities that we're going to do in that area. To do that area so that we can create a true pipeline of quality education along the entire value chain. When we talk about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we are not talking about doing this at the university, but we are talking about creating a pipeline. A pipeline that begins from primary school that takes us through junior high school, all the way to the university. A pipeline that will allow Ghana to really use what we call the 4 C's, or utilize that and implement the 4 C's, which is communication, effective one, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. That will be seen. And for that to be seen, we have to take a serious look at STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, not as isolated subjects, but brought together. How do you get children to think creatively? I always make the point that if you really want to ensure that your education system is fit for purpose, you need to have people who think creatively. And creativity should be front and center of what you do. How do you do that? You know that invariably we ask questions, why, how, when? And that is the lowest level of learning that you can find. If your education service is preoccupied with why this happened, when this happened, and even evaluate, you are not there yet. You get there when you talk about create. So when you look at what is called the New Bloom's taxonomy, or the Web's depth of knowledge, questions that focuses on create is what allows students to think critically and become the kind of people we need for the 21st century Ghana, where the 4th industrial revolution is going to take away our jobs. Within the next few years, it is said that 40% of all jobs will be eliminated. And robots will be here. Critical thinkers will be needed. Internet of Things will take sway. You sit in your office and you want to see what is going on in your room. You log in and you see how everything is happening. You get into your house and your door recognizes you by the iris of your eye and open for you to enter. The world is changing, and it's changing fast. We need critical thinkers who will be able to navigate that space and create the next generation of robots and programs, software, that countries will have to survive by. So the STEM is not, we are just doing science. No, it's the combination. And the combination that will call upon our children to be creative and to be critical thinkers. So instead of asking them, what are the causes of pollution? You want to ask them, how do you create a city without pollution? And that is how their creative talents will be brought to the fore. That is where they will use science, they will use technology, they will use engineering, they will use mathematics to answer, to respond to you. And that is the future that we want to create for our children under the new curriculum that has been deployed at the primary level and soon to be deployed at the junior high school level and also all the way to the senior high school level. At the primary school level, we want to improve learning outcomes and reduce learning poverty. But invariably what you see is this. Our children go to school for 11 years for us to know whether they did well or didn't do well. If I want to evaluate how Kokrobite primary school is doing, I'll have to send the circuit supervisors. Now they have a new name, CISOs, right? I have to send them there and say, give me a report. When the CISO is there, they will do everything so well. When CISO disappears, learning disappears. And there's a phenomenon that is called presenteeism. I'm present, but I'm not delivering. How are we going to stop that? We have to do what other nations are doing. Students are evaluated on a year-by-year basis at the national level. The World Bank talks about learning poverty, and they talk about the fact that by year 10, 53% of students in various countries cannot read for understanding, and Ghana is not an exception. Our human capital index is 0.44. So that is why the president says, transform the space. So transformation of the space means that all 4th graders this year are going to be tested across the length and breadth of this country. Every one of them. So that we'll see the challenges that is confronting us as a nation. And then we'll give them 1 year. We'll give them 1 year during the 5th grade of primary 5, to do intervention. We will test them again in primary 6. The following year, we're even going to begin from primary 2, primary 4, primary 6, and beyond. This year, every student will be tested at 4th grade level. National standardized test, which has been done in Singapore and other places, is going to be a reality under the watch and leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So parents, our goal is simple. We want to know whether your child can read or not. And the report will be generated and given to every single parent in this country in mathematics and literacy for them to really know whether their students are doing well or not. And then we'll have an opportunity to track them longitudinally. We want to take advantage of technology to digitize education in Ghana. We have a dashboard that is coming that will allow the Minister for Education to log in and see the attendance of every district, to see how every district is doing. And when the test is deployed and administered, the results will be on a dashboard. There will be a public component where anybody in this country can log in and see how their district or school is doing across the length and breadth of this nation. Things are going to change. And they are going to change because we find in this country youth that are ready to learn, determined to learn. And we need to create a platform for them to do just that. And they will make Ghana proud when the foundation is laid for them. We should be able to find out students from Sabzugu who started primary 1, where did they end up? How many of them were able to make it to the university? The longitudinal tracking system that we are developing is going to allow us to do that. And I want to thank the National Identification Authority for the opportunity that they're going to present to us in giving national identification cards to our students so that we can use that as a unique identifier for every student in this country. We are going to continue with Gallup, Ghana Accountability for Learning Outcomes Project, to make sure that the 10,000 schools that are not doing well will receive additional resources in the form of learning grants to actually improve learning and teaching at the schools. We are grateful to the World Bank for the partnership and for the leadership of GES in this effort. There are many other agencies who are also involved. Junior high schools will be participating in Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA. Countries like Vietnam have gone to PISA, they are taking the test and they are beating the West. Vietnam is a developing country like ours, but because of their reform in education, like what we are doing, they produce 100,000 engineers every year. Yes, they are 3 times our population, but we do 6,000 plus a year. So if we were Vietnam with 3 times our population, we may be doing at most 19,000 a year. 19,000 engineers will not give us the opportunity to attract industries from around the world as Vietnam is doing. 100,000 is what they are doing. And we can do better than that. We can do better than 6,500. We can move forward. And that is why when you hear of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the universities may be willing to admit people. But if we don't produce those young men and women from primary school, if we don't bring basic STEM, if we don't do STEM high schools across the country, how can they get the people to train at the university? It's not possible. So preparing for PISA also means that the Program for International Student Assessment, it also means we have to begin to bridge the gap between junior high school and high school, begin to ensure that we are transforming our junior high school, they can truly participate.